Hello, Warrior Tribe. Today we are going to go over MLA, which is basically a precursor to us beginning our biography projects. And let's just kind of get some terminology out of the way. Whenever we talk about MLA, I'm sure right now it's just a series of letters and you don't really understand what it means. But MLA refers to a group of professional scholars who create and periodically they will update just this universal set of guidelines for citing any type of source. They just kind of come together and decide the best way to present any kind of professional writing. So from time to time it changes. Like if you take a look over here, it talks about how it's in the 8th edition. So even in the past 2 years, they've made updates to how things should be cited within any type of research or any type of writing where you're pulling together someone else's ideas. So whenever we talk about MLA, it's just a very trusted source. Now, why should you even care about MLA? Very good question. Let me go ahead and answer that for you. It's important for several reasons. First of all, it's going to help a curious reader or your teacher, possibly your classmates, to be able to retrace your research steps. And what that means is that almost like your phone number or almost like your home address, it's a way for people to go and directly find the information that you're presenting. So it's very important to be accurate. Also, just as important, it helps to build your credibility as a writer and possibly to even win an argument. If you have credible sources and you've cited them, they can be found. There can be extended research that's done. It just helps to promote your argument and support your argument. But most importantly, it just helps to give credit where credit is due. You don't want to take other people's ideas and just kind of take them as your own. And so you want to give that credit to someone who's done all of that hard work, whether it is with direct quotes, paraphrasing, summarizing. It just helps you to avoid plagiarism, which in essence helps you to avoid cheating. Now, there are two big things that we need to keep track of whenever you're talking about MLA, and you'll hear your teachers talk about these two topics as we go. One is called in-text citations. They can also be called parenthetical citations, parenthetical notations, but it's just giving credit within your work, within that body of work, within your writing. And then the other is your works cited page, which is going to come at the end of your assignment, at the end of your work. So with their in-text citations, a big question is, well, how are these citations handled within the essay and exactly what needs to be cited? Well, first of all, anything that does not come from your brain needs to be cited. These are these direct quotes. You think about text evidence. We've been working on that lately, so we've begun those steps in determining what is our ideas and what would not be our ideas. So those direct quotes, that paraphrasing, which just kind of means condensing other people's words, but you still stay true to the same idea. And then summarizing, which is just kind of giving that overall or general meaning of something. Anytime it does not come from you and it's some other source, then you need to give that credit where credit is due. So if it's in question whatsoever, even if you're using visuals such as tables, graphs, images, anything, you need to go ahead and give credit to the person to which it originated with. If you think about works cited, it's also known as the bibliography. If you guys have ever, heard of that word, it refers to the same thing. But at the end of your work, it's just a complete list of all the sources that you used within your paper, within your writing. It has a specific, easy-to-follow format that is required. And while you're not expected to memorize these, because like I said, they're ever-changing, it's quite difficult, you need to have that familiarity not only for testing, but for basically writing for the rest of your just educational career in general. And don't you worry, it's very easy. We're going to give you all the resources. It's pretty much just like a math formula, almost just plugging things in where they need to go in order to get it correct. You're going to be just fine. Now, let's go ahead and start with the in-text citations because it's going to be the first thing that you come up on whenever you're reading a paper. So let's suppose you wanted to use a line from a book or an online article that you found as part of your essay. It's so simple, so easy. All you have to do within parentheses is to include the author's last name and the page number where you found the material. So let's take a look at an example. It says, within quotation marks, "Then, all of a sudden, it was like I opened my eyes one day And notice that the world is full of beautiful girls. And I've had a hard time thinking about anything else ever since. We're quoting the Biebs, Justin Bieber. There's a couple of things I want you to notice within this. First of all, there's no period at the end of the quote because the period is not going to come until the end of the entire in-text citation, until the entire idea is kind of come across. You're going to see there is no comma specifically between your author and your page number, and then it all goes inside the parentheses. So believe it or not, Justin Bieber sorta, kinda, actually published something. So that should give you some hope for the future too, that you really could become an author. Just kidding, Biebs, you're awesome. All right, so there's another way that you can handle in-text citation, and it says it's with signal phrases. So if you use the author's name within your sentence, then all you have to do is include the page number as a citation. So that seems a little confusing. Let's take a look at it. An example would go if this were your sentence. It says in her autobiography, yep, auto means she wrote it herself, supposedly. In her autobiography, Kim Kardashian explains that my first white Range Rover was so special. It was the first car I got on my own. It had pink trim, and it was such a smooth ride, so comfortable to be in, and luxurious. Big words, Kim Kardashian, but let me show you some things that you did correctly. First of all, within the sentence, she quotes the author. You can see in the writing that Kim Kardashian, author, is already here, so we don't have to put it within the parentheses. And then you can see that the page number there is included. No period after here, period goes here. That just kind of made me giggle, really. All right, so remember, any material that you use that comes from a source needs to be an in-text citation, and you must include it within your works cited page. So if it's not your ideas, make sure you plug in that credit, and we're going to plug it into your works cited page as well. Now, what if you're just summarizing someone else's ideas or information? As we stated earlier, you still need a citation. So let's look at a more academically sound source for this example. This is not TMZ. We're talking about Stephen King. And he published a novel on writing. It says a memoir of the craft. So before finding success as a writer, Stephen King worked as a high school English teacher. A profession, he admits, zapped most of his creative energy. Take a look at why this is going to be correct. You saw, and let me go back here really quickly, you saw that the author is included within the statement, the page number is at the end, no period, period comes here, page number in parentheses. But there's another way that you can write this as well to give that proper credit to where you're not, quote unquote, stealing somebody's ideas. And you're using the direct quote. It says, King said, I liked my coworkers and I loved the kids, but by most Friday afternoons, I felt as if I'd spent the week with jumper cables clamped to my brain. A little bit more specific, putting forth a different tone sort of in your writing. Just by pulling out a direct quote, definitely a different feel than what you had just read. But you can see in the same instance, you have given credit to the author. The page number is inside parentheses, and it comes before the period. I also like that they have ellipses to eliminate any unnecessary information. We've talked about that in class as well. Now, that is just how simple that your in-text citations are. You simply just have to make sure you have the author in there somewhere in the page number. And what doesn't go in the writing is going to go inside the parentheses. Page number always goes inside the parentheses, and it always goes before the period. Next, we're going to have our works cited page. Let's take a look at it. It says that it gives more detail about where you found the information in your paper. So this is almost like a phone book. Of just addresses, information, just an alphabetized order of all of the sources that you used in your paper. There are sort of like 9 basic things that hopefully you're going to be able to find. You're not always going to be able to find all 9 of these things, especially depending on the source that you use, but this gives you just a general idea of what you're going to be looking for. So it says the works cited should include these 9 core elements if, that's why it's bolded, if the information is available. And the thing is, not every source has all 9 of these items, so it's really just using your good judgment if you can find the information. You see, we have author, title of the source, title of the container, so that means like if it's contained within a book or contained within an encyclopedia, any other contributors, which version it is, the number, publisher, publication date, and location. So that'll make more sense once we take a look at a works cited page. More often than not, it says there's often more than one correct way to document a source. So it's constantly changing. There's also something called APA, but of course we're focusing on MLA. So ask your teacher if anything is in question, if you're unsure, or if you don't know what specifically needs to be included. But pretty much you can just look at an example and plug in the information, and it's going to be fairly easy. Here's a little bit more detail. Whenever we talk about the author, the first thing that we're talking about is their last name, comma, first name. Not always can you find the title, or I'm sorry, not always can you find the author there. Sometimes you just have to start with the title. But if the author is present within your works cited, you're going to do their last name, comma, first name, and then a period. An example of source. This talks about if there's a standalone book title, if you use the entire book. If you used a chapter or a section of the title and you only want to use that one part. If you're talking about newspaper, magazine, academic journal, article title, a website article title, or even a YouTube video title. That's what we're talking about with our source. Whenever we say title of container, it just means the book title that contained the chapter or section that you used, the title of the whole academic journal that an article was located in, the main website, not the title of the website, but the main website overall, or the web page that you used, the database where the journal and article was found, or the online streaming provider, like meaning Netflix or YouTube. For 4, it's important to, if it's important to what you're writing about, to include the information about any contributors, anybody that is contributed to the work on the title page. So it can include words like edited by, you can look for introduction by, translated by, illustrated, narrated. Just look for those words. If you find them, plug them in. If they're not there, just keep on going. When you're talking about version, with 5 and 6, your version and your issue number, it's just sort of like your volume. If you ever see the word volume or edition and then issue number 7, for example, that's where that information would be plugged in. So depending on your source, you may or may not have those. You will, however, have a name of a publisher. So you're going to omit any business words such as company, corporation, incorporated, or limited. But whatever the name of the publisher is, you're going to include it there. The publication date is important. It says this is the published date for articles or online materials, or the copyright date for any printed materials like books and such. It's not when you accessed it. It's when it was published or when the information was updated or created. And then it says use the exact page number for printed materials. So if you printed anything out, just 1P if you use a single page, double P for multiple pages, or you're going to use the exact URL. Don't use any URL shorteners such as tiny URL or anything. You're going to omit the HTTP and such at the beginning, but you're just going to go straight into the full URL. Yes, the full link looks like just a big clunk of information. It's very clunky on the page, but many teachers or professors who read your papers on screens, it just makes it convenient to have that clickable link available to where they could actually click this hyperlink and just go straight to your resources, which just adds to your credibility. Another key thing, of course, is punctuation. It's important with sentences, so that way you can effectively get your point across. It's just as important within your works cited, so you can effectively share your resources that you're using. You're going to see it's even kind of put in here, so that way you can see what you do. You have a period only after the author, the title of the source, and your location. Everything else you're going to see has those commas. It's strung together with a series of commas. But don't worry, you're going to have examples to take a look at, and you can model those examples. Now, if you put the whole shebang together, this is how it's going to look. If you used sections throughout an entire book, different quotes, different resources, different paraphrasing, summarizing, you're going to use the entire book. You would have King, comma, Stephen, period. In italics, you have the title. You have the publisher, comma, and then the publishing date. If you only used one single page of information, which isn't going to apply to our biography page. This one, of course, is your biography project. This is going to apply more so to your biography project. But if you happen later on to use just a single page, it goes King, comma, Stephen, still last name, first name, period. You have the title, you have your publisher, publishing date, and then you refer to just that specific page. And if you used several pages, still the same format, last name, comma, first name, period, italicize your title. You have your publisher, you have your publishing date, and then you have several pages, so you double up the P. See the difference? For this citation, it says, which of the 9 core elements are included? You're going to see we have the author, the title of the source, your publisher, publication date, and location. And location, of course, just refers to your page numbers. So this is a perfect example to let you know if you can't find the information, if it's not there, you're going to be fine. Also notice that this word is italicized because it is a major work. It goes from specifics to more general, like your author, into the book title, or your author, your website title into and then the name of your title, your entire web page. It will be italicized. It says for smaller pieces like article titles, poems, short stories, etc., you're going to use quotation marks instead. And again, we'll show you all those examples. So let's try one together. It says build a works cited entry for multiple bits of information taken from this magazine article. And all of the information that you need is going to be right there for you to take a look at. What's it going to look like? It should look like this. You have your author. You have the title of the article. You have the magazine it was found in. It showed you the volume. It showed you the number. You have the publishing company. You have the date it was published, and then you have the multiple pages there. Something I want to show you too really quickly. Let's zoom back around. You have a space right here. This is called a hanging indent. There's a certain way that we can fix this as you're typing whenever you're doing your works cited, if you have multiple entries, to where it will do it automatically, or if you have a long entry and you know it's going to extend to a second line, there's a certain way that you can do it. But this is basically just an indentation, just a tab over. However, like I said, there's an easy way that you can fix your typing as you go to where it will do it automatically if you're doing your works cited. But that's called a hanging indent. You always have that space there if it extends onto the second line. Now, a little bit more about containers. And a container, if you just think about like a box or just something that you store something else in, it's like the information in a book is stored within the book. So that's what it's referring to with containers. So it says you may need to add a little more information about where you found your information, because databases, e-reading platforms, and other media streaming services all host other published works. So if you use any of these, you'll just have to add an extra scoop of information to your citation, which again, I promise you will show you those examples. So let's just say you want to use an article from an online journal database called Gale Group. Here's what you have. Now, something that you're going to see, your citation is going to look like this. Wow, a little overwhelming, but let's talk about why it looks this way. You have your author's last name, comma, first name, period. You have the title of this specific article. You have where it was accessed. you have the publishing company, and you have the date it was published. Then you have that extra information. It was found in the Student Resources in Context, which is part of the Gale group. And then you have this whole link to which you can click to where somebody could go and find that exact information if you didn't want to type it in exactly, which hopefully this would be in an electronic version, so that way you could just click and go. It is super long, but if you can't find the article anywhere else online, you have to use this whole thing as your citation. And I know it's crazy, thank goodness for copy and paste that we'll be able to access those things, but this is exactly how it's supposed to look. You're going to notice that the first chunk ends here, but then the second container, the online database, is included as the second scoop of information. So whenever we talked about the second scoop, like kind of the extra, this is where it was found, that's how you would add it in. It just kind of comes there at the end. Let's take a look at a sample works cited page. Take notice of a couple of things. First of all of these margins you don't have to worry about specifically because we're going to help you to kind of put those things in. So these specifics is not something that you need to concern yourself with. We'll help you set up your pages. But it says double space all lines in 12 font, the 12-point font in Times New Roman. You're going to alphabetize all your entries. And what if more questions arise as you're working? You know, what happens if you get confused? There's a couple of resources that we're going to put up there for you, but if you were just even to Google MLA Handbook 8th edition, you're going to be able to locate anything that you need with your works cited or your in-text citations to see how it works. You are finished. We have gone through just a basic understanding of MLA. I don't know if you've gone this in depth before, but especially before you begin 8th grade, and for those of you who will be taking English 1 next year, it's just really important that you understand the why. It's not just being thrusted a bunch of information and figuring it out and not really knowing why you're doing it. We want you to be prepared and to fully understand the responsibility that comes with using other people's words. And just writing them out in any kind of project. Way to go.